graciousness of the Oklahoma chapter, they funded a research trip to Washington, D.C. So we were going to have 5 people go to that. I have not been to the National Archives. This is the center of all things, all records that we all want. I've not been there since before COVID, and everything in the world changed.
Michael, can you speak a little bit louder or get a little bit closer?
We get a little bit closer.
Perfect, thank you.
All right. So none of us had been there since before COVID, and lots of things had changed. Some things for the better, some things for the worst. The famous Scottish poet, Robert Burns, says the best laid schemes of mice and men oft go awry. And they do. So we started off with a plan A, plan B, plan C. So when you go somewhere to do a research trip, you always, the worst thing that could ever happen is you get to Wednesday morning and you've done everything that you wanted to do. So you need to have, okay, if I get through everything, what else can I do? So of our team of 5 people, 2 people literally 2 days before we were to go were exposed to COVID. 1 person came down. So we went from 5 people to 3 people. So we came up with plan D, plan E, and plan F, and probably even more on top of that. Gonna do. So most of the records that we focus on are the records of the Cherokee commissioners, the first board records, the second board records, the third board records, and the fourth board records. And they're subdivided, and sometimes you don't know which one is which, but that's how they're arranged at the National Archives. Some of the things that changed for the better there is that if you've ever been there, there used to be a lot of really grumpy people who worked there, and a lot of them retired. There were still a few of the old stuff, but most were very, very, very helpful and very friendly and very positive. For the worst is they used to allow more than 1 person to use records, the very same records. That changed. So only 1 person can use a group of records at a time. Anna Smith, who was there, had a question, and she asked me to come over, and I touched the records, and you would have thought I stole national security clearance items. I got my hand slapped, graciously, but still slapped nonetheless. So things were just a little different. One of the things we were going to do was look for bounty land warrant applications. One in particular, David Hampton wanted the bounty land warrant for Crawling Snake. It was given to his widow, Sawachi. So it was appropriate for this group to see this. No application. So the one on the left is a land patent. So the bounty land was approved, the warrant was issued, and it was turned in for land. But they can't find it. If anybody is on Fold 3, and I think it's free for anybody, there is an index to what's called the unindexed bounty land warrants. And one of the archivists told me, said, the National Archives updated their computer equipment and their internal index, and they had indexed all the way up to letter M. They didn't back up their records. So when they updated the security, the equipment, that all their indexes disappeared. So they're re-indexing all these records. There are, within the bounty land records, 2 different kind of records. It's called the English name records and a subgroup of Native American records for bounty land. So for Crawling Snake, who's really going snake, what you don't know is, because he's Native American, is it within the Native American, or is it in the Anglo because it's an English name. Is it listed as crawling snake, one word, crawling dash snake, one word, or snake, comma, crawling as snake? So the odds are this is what you're going to get. And it can be in one or it can be in another. So you just take a guess. Now, I also looked for Judge, the minor child of Path Killer, deceased, who was a warrior in John McIntosh's company. And Judge's guardian applied, who was one of the Murphys. And I've been interested, Mary Bell knows this. And Judge is never mentioned in relationship to Path Killer's reservation in Tennessee. So I was hoping it would explain who his mother was and when his father actually died. But again, we didn't find it. I got out of all the ones that I submitted, I found one, and it was the person that I was actually the least interested in. So I am always impressed by Jack Baker. Jack Baker got the National Archives to let him have access to all the records, the original textual records of the Cherokee Agency in Tennessee. And that's what we thought we were going to find. That's where they were going to be, because they're mentioned as attachments to letters. Well, you see what we found. So you could be sad or discouraged, but what you have to always think is, I know where it's not. One night we had dinner with a friend of mine up there, Stephen Dennis, who some of you may know. And so I explained this situation because he has done some stuff. And he actually came up with some great ideas. Not necessarily easy, but at least for the muster rolls that were used to record people at the very end when they arrived in the West. That's one of the categories of the muster rolls. He had some ideas and they helped a lot. Now, one of the problems we ran into when we were there is that we were going to have 5 people, and the 2 people who couldn't come were going to bring extra scanners. So we had 3 people and 2 scanners. Now, while we were there, a lady I know happened to be there, and I told her we were coming. I've used her to scan documents for me occasionally. So she said, I have an extra scanner. Do you want to use it? Now, poor Anna Smith got that one. And you go, it was really hard. She worked hard and she persevered. So she gets Jerry Clark, who a lot of you know, along the way told me, he said, Mike, there is in Record Group 49 files about Cherokee reservations under the 1817-1819 treaty. So one of the things on my list to ask was to ask an archivist. And so I asked an archivist and she said, oh yeah, it's either this one or this one or this one. So I only had enough space to look at 2, and 2 were not. So, but this one right here, I was looking for 1817, 1819. These were really post-Civil War records, heavily North Carolina, but also a lot of Indian territory. So I took a picture, I shared with North Carolina Cherokees, and it's something to look at later in the future. But you never know what you're going to find. One of the things Jack looked at were the confidential records of the Secretary of War. And I'm not going to read this letter, but these were things that were never microfilmed. This is about a meeting right here. I think the Bells, John Bell and Stan Wadey had a meeting, Secretary of War. One of the big areas that we were going to work at is because all the records, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th board, there was an entry of claims papers of the 2nd and 3rd board, and that's where 1842 claims would be. but they're not there. But that's where they would be if they were in the National Archives. That entry only contained 30 files, a lot of North Carolina, but not exclusively. There were some Indian Territory Cherokee. Now, in the middle of going through this, in the middle of the file of Johnson Rogers was depositions and testimony about the Unicoi Turnpike. No clear reason it was there. So lots of pages. And of course, I emailed it to Brett Riggs. He had never seen it. He was thrilled. But you don't know what you're going to find until you look. And you usually find stuff you don't really expect. Another one of the record groups are the spoliation claims decisions for the first board. They were microfilm, but some pages were missed. And poor Anna she got a long list of pages that were not on the microfilm. And it'll be something one day we get around to getting online. But this is claim, first board approved spoliation claim number 1007, the claim of Satoya, Atohi, and Chickasaw of Katoqualohi. I've never heard of that place before, Georgia, for $542. Sataya and Atahi, two of the claimants being duly sworn, say they together with Chickasaw, now in Arkansas, are the children and surviving heirs of Kanoskiski, their father. Witnesses were Grape Walanita and James Walanita. And out of their $542 claim, they got $250 approved. Now, all records connect together. Nothing ever sits by itself alone, floating out in space. In the registers of payment, Satya, who lived near Six's town, which may be the name that was, and Atahi. So if you look on both of them, you can see that spoliation number 1007, each of them got half credit. So their sibling who had gone west was dead by the time it was paid. So you want either this or that, but you really want both this and that. Every record, every piece of evidence tells you a little bit more. So we're deep in the pieces. We're deep in this entry, we're deep in this claim, we're deep in this. And you go up and you look, okay, you put the little pieces together and you start seeing a clearer picture. Jack scanned first board approved spoliation claims files. And this is claim 681, and it's for a Cherokee woman named Anawake. And she claimed for horses and hogs and pistols, $450. It was approved at $296, and you're thrilled. You have an original claim. If you look at her register of payment, where it shows what she was paid, she had a valuation, which was transferred somewhere else. She had a spoliation, $545. She had another spoliation, $679. She had a spoliation, $671, one I mentioned, and another spoliation, $682. But for $679 and $681, it says her share. And her share was only $74. So she was only credited a quarter of the claim, but the claim file doesn't say why. But first, we're going to try to figure out what the valuation that was transferred. What is in book C-417? Some woman in Ustanale. So when you look at it together, you see, oh, it was a clerical mistake. They found it, they scratched it out, they corrected it. This has nothing to do with Anawake. But if you look at the spoliation claims decision for 681, it says the claim is for the heirs of Jesse Van, including Anawake, Jenny, Sally, and Nancy. And over on the side, you'll notice these a lot, you have notations and they're cross references to the registers of payment. So if you follow those, Jenny Van, Nancy Van, and Sally Van, and they were both paid, all paid a quarter of claims 679 and 681. Otherwise, you'd never know how they connected. This or that, both this and that, or this and that, and all the other stuff as well. So, you know, the Trellaters Association is working on the 1842 claims. I've not talked lately, but out of all those claims, there are 3 bound books that can't be accounted for. 2 of those we have indexes to, and one of them is Delaware District Book 3. So I just want you to look at the very last line on this page is claim 776, the heirs of Joshua Buffington. Now, this is the same Joshua Buffington Mary Bell mentioned in her Cherokee Moments as having married. In the minute docket for the fourth board claims, if you read it, they include, lots of the claims include, having fully considered the papers submitted to a former board. So basically, the first board passed to the second board passed to the third board passed to the fourth board, and the fourth board just denied just about everything. In the fourth board is a claim number 802 in the fourth board for, says Sabia, and in the claim papers it says Sabra Buffington. Rent for a public stand on the old federal road for the years. Now, you go, well, is this the same people? So one of the things I want you to look at is at the very top of the claim, it has 800, but it's stricken through, and then there's another number written next to it, 776. And if you look at the dates within the claim, April of 1842. So even though the fourth board claims book is missing, this particular claim, its papers survived, and it's in the fourth board claim papers. Another claim that you'll find in the fourth board are the heirs of Thomas Goss for a stand or a tavern on a public road adjoining the village of Cass, County, Georgia. You may be interested, or you may have an ancestor who had a stand or a tavern. So if you know they had one, who else had one? And how close were they together? And where were they? Who was their competition? And how many were there? Amy Costine, who a lot of you know, is working on certification for the house of Michael Hildebrand. And we found a claim that refers to that. He received no benefit from the treaty except pay for his improvement that he located for a plantation under said treaty on the Ocoee River, near the crossing of the road leading from Columbus to the state of Georgia, being the place where he now lives in Polk County, Tennessee, having purchased the same from the state of Tennessee. And he did not believe he received the full compensation for the ferry he had on the south side of the Hiwassee River. Fourth board claim 62 is for Charles McIntosh. And among the, yes, this is pink stationery. Adam Guerin gave testimony that at the time of the Treaty of 1817, he resided on Captain John McIntosh's premises on Little Mouse Creek. I understood that Charles McIntosh settled himself and family at the Big Spring at what was called the head of Little Mouse Creek. and had taken the place for a reservation. Sometimes after that, Benjamin Griffith, a white man, came, and I won't go into all the gory details. Charles McIntosh and his family came to his father's, John McIntosh. So if you're looking for unequivocal proof of parentage, you never know where it's going to pop up. Another entry we worked in was entry 236, which is labeled the miscellaneous claims papers of the first board. And these boxes are crammed full of papers. And the only thing that is truthful about the title of the entry is miscellaneous. Not everything in here is claims, and not everything is first board. This is from the folder of Rain Crow, and they are receipts paid to him by Hugh Montgomery in 1829. So this is an old settler record. In the folder of Sarah Rain Crow, part of the testimony is by a man named James McTeer, and he all but says she is his mother. He also testified for her in an 1842 claim, which lays more on it. The reverse of the papers, if you'll notice, it was admitted. So these papers are in the miscellaneous claims papers of the first board. It's actually an approved claim, which should be somewhere else in the records, but it wasn't. It's simply, and there are a lot of them spread through those records. Here is one for in the folder of Elizabeth Ratley. It's relative to an enslaved woman, but it gives you more family drama and details than you really want to know. And if it's your family, you probably want to know. Another folder is the folder of Gideon Morgan. This is a claim for his gold mine on Coker Creek. And in this, he gives lots of details about Coker Creek and Camp Armistead. And Brett had a copy of this, but I sent him the entire file, and it had other papers he had never seen. You want this, you want that, but you also want everything else too. So you're down deep in the weeds, looking at everything. The folder of Gideon Morris, who is not Gideon Morgan, there is the court case papers from the Hall County, Georgia Supreme Court of the Western Circuit. And this was a big lawsuit over gold mining. Who could gold mine, who could not gold mine? It's a fascinating read. So you realize, what do you do when you realize you don't know as much as you thought you did? You have to eat humble pie. So one of the records that Jerry gave me an index to was this book. And I just assumed he gave me the whole thing. He didn't. He only indexed maybe a quarter of it. And poor Anna spent days working on this book. But I will say it was well worth it. Here's a claim, and it's listed with spoliation claims, but these are really valuation or improvement claims. The heirs of John Walker, deceased, for the south bank of the Tennessee River at the place called Lowry's Ferry for $4,090. And it's cross-referenced to Register of Payment Book B38. Here's a claim for Fox Taylor near Red Hill on the waters of Qualahula Creek, where Benjamin Hawkins lives, Bradley County, Tennessee. Now, within these, there's multiple improvements who are individually being claimed for. The second one is a half mile from the first place where DeArmond now lives. One other improvement on Candy's Creek. Fox Taylor also claims an improvement on the head of Quahulla Creek as a gift from his uncle, Five Killer. The next improvement is the above place belongs to Redbird based on the judgment of the commissioners. If you read deep in here, it says, by the instruction of General Nathaniel Smith, superintendent, spoliation is allowed Fox Taylor on 40 acres of land, including 2 improvements, commencing at the spring. So he had been dispossessed and got spoliation or rent for having been dispossessed. And sometimes you run across just things that you go, what is this? So this is a claim. It's got notations on the side. For the heirs of Fox Fields, deceased, this is perhaps an error in the name, the claim of the valuation of an improvement in the lower end of Dogwood Valley, Walker County, Georgia, adjoining Sleeping Rabbit. He was dispossessed in the spring of 1832. And at the bottom it says the name of the heirs, as far as we have gleaned or learned, James or Joseph Fields, Lucy Fields, and Nancy, the widow of Fox Fields. But you never assume anything. If you look in the registers of payment, it notes, it appears to the satisfaction of the commissioners that Ollie Lastly, James Fields, Lucy Fields, and Nancy, the widow, are the only heirs of Fox Fields. Ollie Lastly was the stepdaughter of James Lastly. Her mother was Elizabeth Wickett. Here's a claim. These are valuation claims for Tickaniski or Catcher. A claim for an improvement on the Chattahoochee River at Standing Peachtree Town, Cobb County, Georgia. He was dispossessed in the spring of 1832. And a notation at the bottom. There are 2 men by this name, by the name of Tickaniski. The claimant of the above is the stepson of George Still. Here's a claim for Nancy Griffin, and what jumps out at me is she's the widow of Chuliski and right of her Cherokee child. If she's claiming in right of her Cherokee child, she is not Cherokee. And there was an improvement on Mill Creek and an improvement in the Chattooga Valley. John Brown, who had the ferry in Chattanooga and has the quote unquote tavern building up there, claimed for a valuation of improvement on the Tennessee River at Browns Ferry, Hamilton County. It was omitted by Young and Caldwell. They based it on the testimony of Colonel Kelly, an old settler. That's not a Cherokee old settler. That would be a white settler who had been in the Cherokee Nation. And he stated that the improvement belonged to Brown. This is a valuation by Bill Wickett, claimed a valuation for an improvement on Young Deers Creek in Forsyth County, Georgia. And down in the notes at the bottom, it says the reason he said he did not apply sooner was he was in the Florida service under General Nelson. So there would be, if you're researching this man, there's some kind of military record for him, which is not what you would think of in a valuation claim. This is a claim actually of an old settler. So when does an old settler not be an old settler? Daniel A. Perdue, or the heirs of Keneally deceased, the first wife of said Daniel and mother of Daniel, Lewis, William, Joseph, Polly, and James. He claimed a valuation for an improvement on Chickamauga Creek, Walker County, Georgia, a grist mill and sawmill built in partnership. So he claimed part of it. The man removed to Arkansas under the Treaty of 1828, where his wife died. He returned to this country with his, it says 5 children, and bought the land which he built the improvement made. After the improvement in partnership with the white man before the ratification of the treaty, he took up with a Cherokee woman and lived with her some time after he returned, then drove her off. Then took another white woman to live with some time with her and drove her off, and is now living with a white woman of ill fame. This is an improvement claim for Tiana, who it says the wife of Big Dollar Gas, but that's Big Dollar Guess, who was the son of Sequoia in Wills Valley. So clerks do make mistakes in spelling. This is a valuation claim for Rachel Lowry for an improvement in right of her father in Red Hill, Marshall County, Alabama. Pointed out by James Spencer, John Drew, and Alexander Gilbreth, who testify that from a difficulty that took place with the whites in account of their coming in and settling on the Cherokee lands, a young white man was killed. And John Looney, the claimant's father, he became alarmed and abandoned the above place and removed to the west without receiving anything for his improvement or transportation or subsistence. His daughter, the present claimant, has returned from Arkansas and is now here asking for the above valuation. This is a claim for Samuel Martin, the son of Bryce Martin, claimed an improvement in the waters of Setting Down Creek in Cherokee County, Georgia. Now, if you notice at the top, it says Samuel Martin, son of Bryce Martin, and it's got a little asterisk. At the bottom, the asterisk says, and the son of Omi Utley, or Amy Utley, a white woman. Maxwell Chambers made a claim for evaluation of an improvement on Candies Creek, Bradley County, Tennessee, for $88. It was admitted by Young and Caldwell, and it cross-references to B20. So if you look at the valuation in Young and Caldwell for Maxwell Chambers, he was a white man, looks like he was a shoemaker, and he has a valuation totaling $1,112.45. In his register of payments, he has a valuation for $1,112.45. And he also, ditto, another valuation for $88. All the little pieces fit together. Now, these books are books of claims. They're not actually valuations. And they point other places. So I only have a copy of the cover and the index to this book. It is the Valuations by McMillan and Hare. And the title of this book cracks me up every time I read it. A continuation of promiscuous valuations made by McMillan and Hare in 1838. So in the C index, if you look at the fifth one down, Maxwell Chambers of Tennessee on page 26. That's probably the valuation that goes with the claim. Either this or that, both this and that, or this and that, and all the other stuff as well. So you go deep into the weeds and you look for records and records, and then when you get them, you put them together and you perk up and you go, it's all connected. The registers of payments and the valuation and the spoliation claims and the 1842 claims and the Forthburg claims and the first port claims and the miscellaneous papers, everything fits together and it gives you a picture of what really was going on. Now, I said that we were saved by a friend of mine who runs the Lincoln Archives Digital Project. So she graciously let us borrow her scanner. You know, it was a challenge, but still graciously, by the end of the week, she had decided, she is in the process right now of digitizing all of the compiled service records for the Indian Home Guard from World War II, and they'll all be posted for free on this site. So I hadn't talked to her in a week or so, but they were whizzing along swimmingly. So you don't know what's going to happen until you get there. You don't know what you're going to find until you get there. But it's okay to go down into the deep weeds, but come up once in a while and get a view of the big picture. Thank you. Any questions?